Cool. So for those of you that didn't make it today, this is the recording of the food diary audit. So this is a new kind of trial thing that we're doing where I'm taking some of the food that you've been submitting on the app, and just going over some points or some things that can be changed or some things that I would kind of do if I was kind of preparing that food myself, or also just showing you things that I would look out for. Because I think that's really key. Like anytime that, I always if we put it like an exam paper, for example, or you're sitting down, you're waiting to do an exam, you could revise for hours and hours and hours. Or what you could do is actually look at the marking content or look at the mark scheme, actually put yourself into the examiner's position, find out what they're looking for, and then you're really effective and efficient with the way that you write your exam answer, so you can get all of the points pretty much. Obviously, it's not exactly the same, but essentially it's like, some people try really hard with the nutrition but actually just keep it to the basics and find out what I'm looking for so that you can hit your goals. And then it makes things so much more simple rather than just always trying to guess and kind of spin like a roulette, getting it wrong sometimes, and then eventually kind of getting or hitting the right thing. So it's good to go over this and it's good to actually go over some real life examples as well, rather than just talking about things for the sake of talking about it. So yeah, we'll crack on with the first one. So again, going over kind of like a mark scheme or what I would look out for, which I think is really important. And as I go along with this video, try and make notes yourself. Like, what would you do if you were sitting down looking at these food diaries? Like, what would you change? What can you see? Because sometimes actually when like we might record our food and we might kind of log our food, but how often do we actually sit and reflect on it? So this is kind of an opportunity to do that. So I always look out for protein. How much protein is in each meal? Are we hitting that 20 to 30 grams, which is kind of like an ideal range to be in? Obviously, we need to hit more throughout the day, but there's like if we break down each meal, are we hitting those basics? Then I look at carbohydrates. Again, mostly around when are we having the meal. So if it's a lunchtime meal or an evening meal, think about when we're training, how many carbs are we having before that? How many carbs are we having in total? Is it over 50% of the calories? The structure of the meal. So when I say about structure, like do you have your veg? Do you have fruit? Is it balanced? How is it? Is it not just a piece of chicken by itself? Okay, like it needs to be a meal, it needs to be nutritious. The total calories, depending on your goal, and again, like that's why calories and goals are kind of together, because how many calories is there and how does that relate to your goal? So that's what we'll go over today for each one. So, for example, this first one, the person in today might recognize this. I think this is a really, really good example. So obviously this is under snacks. So what you've got here is obviously some sort of like a tuna pasta bake, I imagine. And this is a great example because there's all well and good talking about the bad things, but there's some good things here as well. This is a really good example of how to log food. We've got the individual bits, like you've got the Greek yogurt, you've got the tuna that's logged, you've got the pasta. You've got each little bit that's logged individually, which then obviously you can then see equates to the meal. So rather than just adding some quick meal in, then it's not. This is like really well structured. Um, so obviously the protein, we've got 40 grams of protein, which is great. Carbohydrates, 63, which is good. Slightly over the 50% mark, but that's okay because, I'm sure that you'd be splitting up and whatnot. And obviously it depends when you're eating. So after 4 o'clock, whether that's before training is another great way to fuel your training. And obviously if it's after, great for recovery as well. So I just wanted to shout this one out because it was actually really good and you can see the time and effort that was put into this to actually kind of log it. Second one is breakfast. Okay, so some of you might have seen this already, but I thought it'd be really good just to kind of go over this, um, like as a community and as a group. Um, I put this one on my social media because it's very, very common. So like just 4 eggs by itself, you and again like going kind of back to that checklist is like the protein is great, it's spot on, and it's exactly what you would need for your goals. However, there's nothing around it. And that's when we go back to like a structured meal. So all it is just one food group and there's nothing else there. So, maybe have some bread, maybe have, I've done it before, is eggs with sweet potato. Or like, where's the carbohydrate? Because the protein in the eggs is just one food group. Okay. So you really need to think about what else is going on. So for the example that I put on social media, what I would do is I'd actually scrap this. So I wouldn't even bother with the eggs in the morning. What I would do is I'd have some oats. I would, within that, have the milk, a little bit of peanut butter for your fats and your protein. You can even add a scoop of protein powder in there as well. So just having eggs by itself, it's not a complete meal. It's not really benefiting you. Yeah, it might be good for protein, but then it's not actually giving you any benefit overall. So I think this is another one where it's like not really red flags because again, like it's that whole thing of like trying and trying and trying, but just that you're so close, but there's just one or two things that you can change to make it even better. Um, or if you're really like, 4 eggs is like a ritual for you, what I would do is add some soda bread or, like some whole grain bread. Because again, it goes into, okay, we can add carbs, but what carbs is it? We want to stay away from the white, refined carbs. We want to go for the unrefined, the whole grain, like the seeded bread. Um, so that's what I would do for that. Um, and again, for this person, their main focus is bulking and gaining weight. So 300 calories is not really, you got a lot of catch up. This is your first meal of the day. And if it's 300 calories, you've got a lot of catching up to do throughout the rest of the day. So by having those oats, not only is it going to slowly release those carbs throughout the day, keep you energized, you've got good protein in there, but also it means that you've got a good start to the day. And then you don't have, before bed, you're then trying to scoff your face because you didn't meet your calories. So I think that was a really good one just to go over. If you want to use 4 eggs as a snack, then that's all good as well. But yeah, there's just a few little changes that you can make. This one is lunch and dinner. So again, this person, we spoke about this one similarly before. They're not here today. So yeah, I understand the simplicity of this, and I get it because it's like, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna bulk cook my chicken, and then it's all ready for the day, and then I've got my wraps. So the pros of this is that it's cost effective. You just have to bulk one kind of like food group, and it kind of does you throughout the day. Downside to it is that it's just repetitive. And to be honest, like what I would do in my situation or how I would look at this, I'd actually okay, cool. So we've got our diced chicken or we've got our chicken cooked. Let's actually split that up into boxes, and that's going to be our lunch prep. Okay, we're going to save that in the fridge, and we're going to take those chicken boxes, however they're kind of divided, and that's just going to be the lunch for the week. And then I'm going to have my chicken and wraps for lunch. And then at dinner, I'm going to have something that's a little bit more structured, a little bit more nutritious, something with vegetables. Okay, I know this is a hard one for this client, but it has to be in there. And again, like if you're struggling with vegetables or salad or anything like that, then it's going to be difficult if it's in a chicken wrap because then majority of that meal is going to be the salad. Whereas if you've done something like a lasagna or if I go back to this example, like the pasta bake, like the sweet corn, the peas, like it's all hidden within the meal, so you don't really like taste it as much. It's not like as predominant. Whereas in a wrap, like it's going to take up like 50% of it. So it's really going to be in your face. So yeah, personally, what I would do, like, well done for the protein, like, absolutely killed the protein goal for the day. But what I do is kind of spread it out a little bit more. We've got 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got 800 grams of chicken there. So, 200 grams that is 4 days a week. That's your lunch sorted for the week. And then you've got your wraps that you can kind of just, split between the days as well. Obviously, definitely try and add some sort of salad in there. I know it's a goal, I know it's a task, but I would definitely keep the lunches a little bit more structured and then go for something different in the evening. Um, Number four, or kind of like the fourth one. So yeah, this client will see this one, and I think this is. I can't remember why I did this one in. Like I remember, I think it was along the lines of, so like it's good and okay, to have coffees, to have sweet things, in a balance of everything, right? But this is just some changes that I made in like my life, or when I was trying to lose as much weight, not as much weight as possible, but when I was on a weight loss journey, there were small little things that I was doing that actually added up and total to a lot by the end of the week. So some of those changes were, rather than going for like whole milk, I was changing it to coconut milk, which is like, almost like 50 calories less. And you're consistent if you're consistently having those, drinks or milk or cereals with, that milk, then it's going to make a massive difference at the end of the week. Um, so things like your coffees, your lattes, still absolutely fine to have. But just think about kind of what. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. I've seen the comment in there. That's all good though. So yeah, like I've seen that, and I think it's not really like a direct at the individual, like any of these. That's why I kind of like don't name and shame or anything like that. Because I think like it's a good example for everyone as well. That like if you're having coffees regularly, think about the milk that goes into it. Think about their sugar or what kind of goes into that. Because again, by the end of the week, that makes a massive difference. So I can see there's oat milk. I don't know if that's dietary or just preference. But coconut milk is something that's a lot lighter. Obviously, it doesn't taste the same. I appreciate that. But even things like Americanos or espressos, those things won't have the milk. It won't have, all of those other bits. That's adding up to those calories at the end of the day. So I thought that was quite a good one just to speak about and touch on as well. And then we've got our fifth one. Um, so again, like another good example, this person, I'm like blowing up their head today. So jacket potatoes, obviously this has pretty much been logged perfectly. But jacket potatoes are like a really good meal. And I remember someone asking me about this like the other day as well. So that's why I put this one in, because there's always questions around like what can and can't I have, and I think even for myself, definitely overlook the simplicity of things. A jacket potato is something that you can easily make. It's got perfect amount of carbs. You can add as much protein as you want, and it's easy to do. So you don't have to think about like splitting foods up into little boxes and putting it in the fridge. You take your jacket potato, maybe you have like a little can of tuna or whatever you kind of want to add onto it, if it's ham or cheese or anything like that, it's quite easy to bring with you to work. And it's so good for you. So this example, obviously you got a cheese, you got baked beans and there's some butter. And again, like look at that, like the bar and the split. You got 20 grams of protein, green tick, carbs was just at the 50% mark, green tick, and the fat's 31% tick. So like that is literally when we go to protein, tick, carbs, tick, structure, tick. Like it's such a simple meal to make. And it's really, really good. So again, like I think going through this, some meal ideas or some recipe ideas, jacket potatoes are an absolute winner and they're really good to do. Um, so that was pretty much all like the key things that I noticed this week. In terms of like overall feedback, I think everyone's like done really well, and I think these have helped because I've noticed a few changes in mostly some breakfast and lunches. Um, and I've noticed a few changes. So obviously, I'm just picking out, some of like not really bad, but I'm just picking out some of the ones that I can comment on, and we can kind of dig a little bit deeper into. Um, but overall, I do think this has kind of helped because I've seen, yeah, a few changes. So I think everyone's done really well with their nutrition this week, to be fair. And well done on the protein because again, like if we scroll through this, everyone's pretty much, obviously coffee aside, everyone's pretty much hit their protein goal every single meal. So obviously that's green flags as well. And this is a range of clients, so it's not just one person that we're digging out. So yeah, I think you've all done really well. Again, hopefully you've taken some notes or anything like that. If you've got any questions for those of you that are here, pop it in the chat, and we can go over it. If not, that pretty much wraps this one up for this week. And next week we might do a little bit more of a topic focus rather than the audits. But yeah, I'll stop recording there. Obviously, if you're watching back from the group and you've got any questions, pop it in the group chat. Or if you're watching anywhere else, just pop a comment down below. So I'll stop the recording.